Hi, Andy here. Right, this is an intro into a really cool video that I did with Robin Thatcher. Now, Robin is quite well known on Twitter, X, and he goes by the name of the Bitcoin and crypto accountant. Now, I actually spoke to Robin ages ago on a very rare occasion that I go on Twitter Spaces, and we had a very brief conversation, and I said, I'd love you to come on my podcast. You're in the UK. It'd be really cool to get your perspective on Bitcoin, on what you do. And so we set it all up, and that happened on the 3rd of April, which was a little while ago. Really interesting conversation. It's going to be hopefully one of a few that's going to come up. This is like part one. And yeah, it was really interesting. It was really based around the cost of living in the UK and what Robin's perspective of it was, a little bit of an introduction into him as well. Big Bitcoin boy, which is really cool. So yeah, sit back and enjoy. It's, yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing this series a lot. Take care, bye-bye. Hit record. Rob, thanks for coming on, mate. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I haven't. This is the first proper conversation. I've very briefly spoken to you over on Twitter X, whatever you want to call it. And I thought, oh, that'd be really cool just so one-on-one with Rob, just as a general conversation. But you're known as on X, the Bitcoin and crypto accountant. So that's like a bit intriguing. And I think, okay, that's really cool. Now, a lot of my audience do like the Bitcoin thing, although people are really interested in gold, silver. So right, bit of a mixed bag, but a lot of them like the Bitcoin crypto thing. I personally like Bitcoin more than anything else. But just as a bit of an introduction, let us know a little bit about you, dude.
Yeah, sound. So I'm Robin Thatcher. I run a company called By the Book Accountancy, just me. I started that business about 5-6 years ago. On the back of that business, I got a bit into what I call traditional finance investing, so stocks and shares and things like that. From that, I created an X profile. My X profile used to be called The Secret Investor. So I'm the Bitcoin and crypto accountant now, but I started it as The Secret Investor. It was an anonymous profile for me to go away and look at. If you've ever gone on X and just looked at a coin token or even a name of a share like MSTR for MicroStrategy, you'll basically get what everyone else is saying about it. And that's what I wanted. I wanted research and analysis on things. And that's why I was the Secret Investor. From there, I found this community in there where basically people invest and look for ways to make up money efficiently. This would coincided with me starting my business. And I sort of I'm 40, so being of that age, I sort of looked at it and went, everything's going digital these days. So digital currency has to be the future in some capacity. We've got e-commerce, we've got everything is online. We've got this whole online community. So digital currency has to be there. So I researched crypto. I started investing little bits here and there, just playing around really, thinking I was going to be a millionaire, when I invested in a picture of a dog with a hat. But it didn't happen. I made money, lost money, ended up back where I started. But whilst all on that journey, I realized there's not really much out there for the tax side of it. And having 20 years of dealing with HMRC and understanding tax, I read the crypto assets tax manual that had been released by HMRC. I got to grips with it, already have my business. It was a natural pivot to sort of go down that route, start sending out a few tax tips to people, just getting the conversation flowing. The way I see it is tax can be very taboo in any subject matter. I'm here to just try and talk in a plain language about tax, and that's what I was doing there. I pivoted my business a little bit, so I created something called cryptotaxhelp.co.uk. Part of my business, it was just a specific crypto area. And my investment journey took me to the Bitcoin conference in Miami in 2022, I think it was. Okay. I went 2022, 2023, and then Nashville in 24. when I went to Bitcoin conferences, I noticed the difference, especially in America. And even in 2022, I would liken America in 2022 to a bit ahead of where we are in the UK now. So it was really interesting. I saw this asset that was quote unquote a crypto, but it was just different. And then I watched Michael Saylor speak, and the guy, honestly, he just changed everything, the way I looked at it. I'm a businessman. I've been an accountant for 20 years, but he spoke about money in a way that I never really had fathomed. And the way he talked about strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, just spoke to me as a business owner. I then bought, at that 22 conference, I bought the Bitcoin Standard, met Safety and got it signed. Read that book. The rest is history. Once you've read that book, I don't think you go back if you spend the time doing it.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin was the only one for me from that point on. Whilst I think, and I won't go into this in too much detail, but I do think that there is room for other cryptos, but I don't know what for. So, for example, when you go into a Bitcoin world and hyper Bitcoinization happens, banks will need crypto for other things, for security tokens, for blockchain technology. Bitcoin's not going to be that security token, for example. So you need a token that does that. But the question is it Ethereum or is it something that's not been invented yet? And I think it's more like the latter, which means that I'm just gambling to go in any of those. I don't know what's going to happen. But the one constant I do know will exist is Bitcoin. So that's sort of my journey, high level, where I got to, where I've come to. And now I'm just enjoying the rabbit hole that I've gone down.
As we all do, and it just never stops, does it?
It never stops, but it makes you change the way you look at everything. And when I first got into it, I was always really keen to say to everyone, I'm not an anarchist. I'm not against governments. I'm not against this. But you can't help but feel like things are being run incorrectly and everything that you've been told and taught is a lie. And it's very easy to fix, but the information's not freely available. When I go back to school and I look at school, did I need to spend the amount of time? So I did business studies. Did I need to spend the amount of time I did learning about Coca-Cola for business studies? Or should I have learned about the tax system and how it works? Well, the latter would be more common sense, right? Because I need it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But they don't do that. Should I have learned about the origins of money? Well, of course, that would have been a handy thing to learn. The problem is when you learn about the origins of money, you ask questions about the current environment. And that's, I think, where it comes to.
Yeah, it falls apart when you start going down that route, doesn't it? And I've on my journey, I've been around in this is my 4th year now. So I've basically been around for that almost like a complete cycle, which is quite cool. And it's been an amazing experience, it has to be said. But getting back to what you were saying a little while ago, once you go down that rabbit hole, once you know, it's so difficult not to know anymore. I mean, you can choose to ignore it, but it's very difficult to ignore it once you go down there. And it takes you into many different places. One really interesting question, you sort of, once you understood Bitcoin, you were saying, and crypto, you decided to sort of sidestep your business and bring in that crypto side in the tax environment. How's that gone? Has there been much growth in that is in the UK, or is it really still slow, early stages?
A bit of both, actually. I'd say there's been growth. You've got to think. I'd probably say it's a massive market. If you think, I'm in trade groups. So I'm in a group called Crypto UK, who we help with the regulation. We've got a working group that does tax, and we try and lobby HMRC for better change and better regulation. But part of that is there's 6, 7 accountancy businesses in there, so there's not a lot. And I would probably, if I was estimating, I'd probably say there's 1 million crypto investors in the UK, but we estimate as a trade group, probably about 80% non-compliance with tax through lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, lack of freely available information, and then also the nature of the asset. There will be people who just say, it's anonymous, they can't find me, that sort of thing, which I disagree with, but that's a different story.
Yeah, that's another story. So that's interesting. So it is growing.
It is growing, definitely.
People are asking, I take it, they're asking you more about it.
And the other thing I'd say there is it is growing and people are becoming more aware that it's taxable and that the tax workings are very complex. The problem you've got in a market cycle is in a bull market, people have got money and they're ready to pay the tax and toe the line. In a bear market, people haven't got money, so they don't want to be told they owe tax because, the nature of crypto and the tax is very difficult. They treat it all as one big, they treat it all as separate assets.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. If I randomly buy a dog with a hat and make £1 million off it and then put that £1 million into Bitcoin, it doesn't matter because I've made £1 million on that asset, that the dog with a hat. So therefore I owe tax on that £1 million, but I've put it into another asset. So to me, that's not real money, but I still owe a tax bill. Then if the bear market hits and Bitcoin goes down 60% like it did last time, suddenly my 1 million's turned into 400,000. But on my £1 million gain, I've got a £240,000 tax bill and an unrealized loss in Bitcoin. So I end up with 400,000 of Bitcoin, but a £240,000 tax bill, and I'm left with not a lot. So I'm suddenly thinking, well, that's not fair. I agree with the concept of it not being fair, but it's just a lack of understanding that causes that. What should have happened is you should have just put 240 grand to one side, invested the rest. But it's hard for people to fathom that in crypto because it's all digital, it's all online, it's not real.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I run my own business. I've got sort of a basic idea of the tax side of things, and I think with my Bitcoin, I just don't sell it.
Bitcoin, the joy of Bitcoin is the concept is easy. As long as you don't sell it, as long as you keep custody of it and sole custody all the time. So the reason I say that is because loans are coming in, and it's really important to understand that if the lending platform takes custody of your Bitcoin, that can be a taxable disposal. But as that market grows, that will become less and less frequent, and you can hold and keep DCAing, and there's no tax to worry about. Even spending your Bitcoin, there is a little tax tip that I give people where if you spend your Bitcoin, depending how much, but say you go out and buy a burger to support a local business that accepts Bitcoin and you spend 50 quid on a few beers and a burger, all you need to do to avoid tax on that is put another 50 quid of Bitcoin into your account, but put another £50 in. And what happens is the £50 you've spent gets offset by the £50 you've put in, and there's no tax to pay. It just neutrals out. It's called bed and breakfasting. So there's those things you can do. But again, it's about the conversation and education. Not a lot of people know that. Not a lot of people will have seen me say that, and possibly the couple of other people that would. So, it's hard to get that information sometimes.
Interesting. And before we get onto the subject of cost of living, what's your view at the moment on Bitcoin?
So I'm like you. I've been in for about a cycle now. I've been around in crypto for a cycle, so I've seen the whole thing. Just in Bitcoin, a bit less. I always say if you've got a 4-year time horizon, you're probably not going to go wrong. If you go through a halving, you're not going to go wrong. So I think you have to take that into account. I saw a meme earlier that made me laugh, and it said all Bitcoiners at 85,000 in 2024, and it was a load of people celebrating. And then in 2025, all Bitcoiners at 85,000, and everyone's crying. And I just ignore that. I block it out. I'm at the point now. I've lived through enough investment to know that you buy when others are fearful. So when price goes down, I just snap more up. I was watching. I don't know if you know Lawrence Leopard, who
I do. Yeah.
So Lawrence, I'm like Lawrence's #1 fan at the moment. I'm reading the big print, just finishing it.
Have you got it?
Yeah, I've got it. I've got the audio book as well. I'd recommend it to anyone. It's a brilliant book. Up there with one of the best. Honestly, I put it up there with the Bitcoin Standard and Broken Money. So, and he's going to Cheat Code next week as well. So I'll hopefully be getting my book signed.
Oh, is that next week?
That's next week. Next Friday it is, the 11th in Bedford. So I will be there, and Lawrence will be there, and I'm hoping to get my book signed. He told me yesterday on X he will happily sign it. So looking forward to that.
I've missed out there. I forgot all about that. I forgot it's in April. I would like to have gone to that.
It's going to be. Listen, there's people like Liz Truss there. I'm not the biggest fan of Liz Truss speaking because she's not a Bitcoiner. I think there's a bit of politics around Peter McCormack changing from what Bitcoin did to his Peter new McCormack show. I think I can understand some. I spoke to some Bitcoiners recently who are a bit annoyed. They say the speaking lineup is more his new podcast than it is what Bitcoin did.
Yeah,
I can see that point of view. I've said I'm going to meet people there and network with clients. I'm not so much about the speakers. Lawrence is someone I really want to see. But what I was saying was, I watched Lawrence yesterday, and the way he speaks so eloquently on the Bitcoin price, and he basically said he's 67. He said, I think in the next 5 years we see 1 million. And he said it with such confidence and conviction that I sat there and went, you know what, I think he's right. So I think over a longer time period, we see a lot. I think it's easy to get caught up in these short time periods where we get, because when we get a peak, right, we get a big peak,
Yeah.
but we just see a lot of stagnation in between. And that's where we get stuck. You know, we went to 112 and everyone was, you know, euphoric. And it seemed like the community thought it was going to go straight to 250.
Yeah.
But you're always going to have those bits where it comes back down. The thing I never get with Bitcoin, and I'm not a trader, so I don't understand, is the news is always so bullish, but the price remains the same. So whether it's priced in or not, I don't know. It's just, you know, things like there was some things going on, you know, yesterday, all the things going on with Trump. It's been relatively stagnant. I'll take that, but I don't know. Where do you see it going?
Sure. Obviously, I don't know where it's going. Because if I knew that, I probably would have remortgaged my house.
I know people that have done that.
Oh, I'm sure they have. Yeah, I'm sure they have. But that's not for me. I'm 60 now, so I'm more interested in just enjoying the learning side of it and helping my children enjoy it together as a family. We're all invested in the process and helping out. You're a family man, aren't you?
Yeah, I've got three kids.
Yeah. See, I've got three as well, and I'm enjoying that journey with them on trying to make a difference for their future more than anything. So the important thing for us will always be to be consistent, to try and void ourselves of too much noise, and look at and try and keep on the path of what we believe in as consistently as possible. So from a Bitcoin point of view, what I do find absolutely fascinating from my own personal observations is that whatever's going on in the Bitcoin world and the financial world, Bitcoin's going to be a part of it. I can't exactly put my finger on the ins and outs and the technical explanations of why that is, but it just makes sense to me. I've tried to get away from being too looking and listening to all the people putting crazy things up on there just to get clicks and views on YouTube and followers on Twitter. And I'm just trying to concentrate on looking at the macro world and how that's going from country's point of view to the state of the economy. And I personally believe we are definitely seeing a slow transition, probably behind the scenes, of big institutional interest in the new dynamics of our future within, as you were saying, the digital way of doing stuff. And I think Bitcoin, well, I'm very, very positive that Bitcoin's going to play some sort of important part in that. So that makes me really excited, because all the time that's going on, then I've got a part of that and my family's got a part of it for the future. So that's just plus plus. But yeah, it could go to, I don't know, 150,000, 200,000. It's irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant.
Mate, I'm still here.
No, you're fine. What's really important to us is that we are a part of that. I think it's a one in a lifetime opportunity for us to actually be early enough to be in something that's going to make possibly a significant difference to my children's and grandchildren's future.
I think the thing I find really interesting as well is self-sovereignty.
Oh, definitely.
I think that's a big word. I went through a few bank freezes last year. Banks stopping me doing transactions for no reason.
Really?
Yeah, and it suddenly made me realise that, I was kicking off with the bank saying, you've stolen my money. And they're sort of going, no, we haven't. And actually you realise you're just a creditor of a bank. You don't own that money. And governments can guarantee it and everything else. But it doesn't matter what wealth you've got in a bank account. it might get eroded away by inflation, but it could get all taken from you tomorrow. And that scared me.
No, 100%. It's once you start understanding and learning those little things, and I'm no expert, but I've learned enough and continue to learn enough to understand that, we need to take more. If there's an opportunity for us now to take a bit more or even more control of how we use and save our money, then I'm up for that all the time in the world, within the parameters of the country that I live in. You've got to follow the rules. But if there's an opportunity to be a part of something that could, where you've actually got custody of the money, unfortunately, the currency that we use, the fiat currency we use in the UK, the pound. If I've got a way of, and my family's got a way of going out, exchanging our time and energy, producing a service in whatever we're doing, and then converting that into an account that is mine, it's ours, it isn't anybody else's. That's dead exciting, really dead exciting.
But I think the other side of that is, and the progress we've got to see is, the governments have to find how to interact with that. I don't think they'll necessarily ban it, but I was at an event a couple of weeks ago where a Conservative politician was there, and his words echoed in my head. He said, governments are scared of Bitcoin because they can't control it, and banks are scared of Bitcoin because they can't monetize it.
Yeah.
And whether we agree with that or not, those two things have to find a happy medium in order to interact. And that's where we're at a bit of a stalemate at the minute. I think there's a way to work it. If I was that clever, I'd be a lot richer. But I think that's what we've got to find the happy medium with. And that's why when you say institutions are buying it, they are, because they see that. But there will come a point where banks accept it, custody it, and there will come a time where governments realise that they're going to have to interact with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if most government people actually own it anyway. But that's another story. It's really funny. I'll never forget. What did I read? I read something about Boris Johnson was taking, what was he, when he finished being Prime Minister and he went on the circuit of speaking.
Yeah.
I think he released in an article that the payments he took was cash, gold and Bitcoin. And I found that absolutely, oh yeah, what a surprise. What a surprise.
Yeah, and it is probably from their point of view to do with what they're advised to do as well, in ways that they can negate the system in perfect ways. I mean, gold's I still think gold's a very, very good store of value.
Yeah.
But again, there's a place for it all in the world. It might not see the gains that Bitcoin sees because we're so early. Yeah,
exactly. Cool. Well, that gives us a lot of food for thought to talk about on other podcasts or doing whatever. But, dude, cost of living. What a nightmare. I call it the shit show. Sorry for me using that word, but I'm finding it a complete shit show now. I'm a dad. I've got 3 children in their 20s, and I'm watching them struggle more and more. I'm watching people that my customers struggling more and more. And the more I get out of this echo chamber of social media and stay in the real world, you can actually witness that things are changing quite quickly, and it's worrying. It's worrying, but it's not talked about as much. I don't know what you...
I have strong feelings on it at the moment. I'm not a political person, but no. I'm becoming more political from a standpoint that they annoy me.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, in the cost of living crisis, so you say it's not talked about. I think mainstream media has a lot to answer for in that.
Sorry, yeah.
I think, and again, this is only from what I've read and what I've seen. I've got no evidence of this, but I think most mainstream media outlets, BBC News, all of them are aligned to a political party. So they have a vested interest in what they report on. What that means is the narrative is decided for you on what they want you to think. And therefore, people only see what they're shown. They don't see the reality. I don't know how it comes to a head. I think it has to come to a head. My opinion as a finance person is that the world has to get worse before it gets better. That's my honest answer. But I wouldn't mind if someone said to me, we're going to make it worse, but in 3 years' time, we'll guarantee you it'll be better, because that the short-term pain is better for the long-term gain. But I don't see that happening. All I see now is a perpetual cycle of politicians coming in and blaming the last party. We're not going to have two-term parties anymore. We're going to have 4 or 5 years of awful leadership, gradually grinding us down, so the next one can come in and do exactly the same and blame the last one. And that's what I see at the moment. And I see this PR machine. I saw Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer saying how it's the 3rd of April. So the 1st of April, they called it something. People were calling it something because everything went up on the 1st of April. So your council tax went up, your gas went up, your electric went up, your bills went up, your Wi-Fi, your Sky TV, all of those have been increased. But Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer on the news saying they've increased minimum wage, so they've put more money in people's pockets. But actually, the narrative around that is a lie, because the average person on minimum wage is worse off from the 1st of April. So they haven't put more money in people's pockets, but that's the PR spin they're trying to give us. And that's the PR spin people are believing. And until that changes, I think we're in big trouble, because my honest opinion is the next 4 years of Labour, 3 years, 4 years, are going to get worse. And then after that, if the Conservatives do get voted back in, the same thing is going to happen. There's going to be tax rises, which doesn't work anyway. There's going to be, until there is radical change and radical rethinking. You're a business owner, I'm a business owner. I don't know if you're aware, but all of the Labour front benchers, as far as I'm aware, have never run a business. They don't understand economics at a basic level. They're listening to advisors who are obviously well-educated but not well-rounded. And from these people, they're very detached from reality as well. I do feel that way. I feel like they're detached from working class people and the pain they're going through. To echo your point, my kids are 23, 18 and 16. I look at it and say my daughter is 23. Potentially her and her boyfriend are going to be on the lower end of the earnings scale for the foreseeable. When they move in on their own, they might be able to save to buy a house. But when they move in on their own, what have they got to look forward to? Well, those takeaways that they have, once every couple of weeks, they'll have to go. You can forget your once a year holiday, because with the money they're on, they're not going to have much left over. So therefore, you sort of go, well, what sort of life is that? Where I want them to have a house, and I think they should work and buy a house. I think that's a good way to live and a good goal to have. But why should you not have a holiday once a year? Or why should you not have that level of enjoyment that you have to settle because of the world we live in? I quite frankly think it's quite disgusting. I don't understand why people aren't rising up against it a bit more. I personally think, and I'm not inciting anything here, but the Southport riots that actually happened, I think they were more to do with people's unhappiness than they were with what actually happened. And I think people, if they sat back and realised it, that's what they would do. They would just angry at the system. And I think that's going to happen more and more. It does worry me to an extent. Yeah.
It worries me a hell of a lot. So we're in agreement. We have got not the political version of a cost of living crisis. We have got a cost of living crisis.
Oh, 100%. We're in a massive cost of living crisis. Yeah. I look at it, I'm incredibly fortunate that I can live my life the way I do. But I look at it and go, okay, what's your minimum wage? 21, 22 grand a year. Yeah. So dual income household at 22 grand a year. What's that? 4 or 5 grand a month at most. Less than that, actually, if you work it out. So you're talking 3.5, 4 grand a month between them. Once you take rent or mortgage, council tax, basic Sky TV, which people should have. It's a luxury, but people should have it. Internet, utility bills. You add all these together, there's not a lot left at all. Once you factor in food and everything else, food bills are through the roof. I always use this as an example. I went out once on a Wednesday night. I finished work, I came home. I work from home, but I said to my wife and the 2 boys, I said, we'll go out for dinner, just go out for TGIs, nothing special. 140, 150 pound later. It wasn't a great meal. Yeah. It was an okay meal. It was meant to be a cheap meal out.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, how is something like such a small luxury become so impossibly achievable for people at a lower level? It's just not fair. It's just not fair.
It's crazy unfair. I feel very what's the right word? Very awkward to think that I've had an opportunity since I left school to get on the housing market, have a good life, enjoy myself as a youngster, have holidays, eat well, have all those opportunities that I thought that the hamster wheel was supposed to provide for us if you grafted and worked hard. And then very slowly, probably since, dare I mention it, 2020, seen this rapid change in the standard of people's living, which is having a knock-on effect on people's mental health, their emotion. And I'm starting to hear, since my son bought his first house last year, obviously him and his friends, all the sort of 28-year-olds, 29-year-olds, all talking. Some have got horrendous, Rob, mortgage. And it's not over 25 years in now. It's over like 30, 36, 35. So it's not, they're knocking on the door going up into their 60s before their mortgage is paid off. And you sit there and you listen to them, and they're all on really decent money, all working hard. But like my son will say, like, I'm not sure whether we can go away this year, Dad. Really? How much money do you still earn? But then we go through, like, because he wants to try and find some money to invest, because he's now thinking of his future. Because I sat him down, Rob. It was really interesting. I said, it's great. I'm so proud of you. You've got on the housing market. I know it's difficult, but I'm really pleased for you. It's down in Essex. He could have picked a cheaper place. But it is what it is, It's still people living down there under the same circumstances. But I said to him, great. Okay, mate, you've now got this chain engine egg. I was, we're saying it in jest, till you're sort of 65, 66 now. And he said, yeah. And I said, all well and good. What we've got to look at is how we're going to try and work out that you've got some sort of standard of living financially later on in life. And he's got his pension, he's got his work pension, he's got private pension and bits and pieces. But when we sat there and said, okay, it's great that you've paid your mortgage off by the time you're that age, then how much money are you actually realistically going to have to then sit back and go, oh, and enjoy yourself? And he went, that's what I'm worried about, Dad. And I thought, oh, for God's sake, man, these kids haven't got a chance. They just haven't got a chance. So it's things like that that really sort of hit home to me, because that isn't fair. It isn't fair. You're encouraged to get on that hamster wheel, and I'm talking too much. You're encouraged to get on that hamster wheel, make us, try and get a house, but you're just fighting against everything.
I don't think you're talking too much, may I add, but I totally agree with you. A bit of an epiphany I had. We went to Australia at Christmas, went to Perth, and they have much of the same battles we do. The cost of living's increasing, mortgages are going up, and they're very unhappy. And I looked at their quality of life compared to us, and I thought, well, it's okay if you've got a holiday on your doorstep, isn't it? Because, the lifestyle is you can go camping, fishing, all of these things. We don't have that in the UK as much. So the lifestyle doesn't equate to that. You have to spend money to do things. And that, like you say, that's where the problem is. People don't have those opportunities. I mean, I remember being 30, so that's 10 years ago. And I said to myself, I need to earn, by the age of 40, I need to be on a salary of about 50K. That was a good salary at the time. Now, 50K would barely get you anything. To your point, I've got friends that did the same. I'm quite lucky. I bought my house 8 years ago and haven't got a ridiculous mortgage. I could have gone and got a bigger house. We didn't need to. So when mortgage interest rates went up, yeah, we got a hit, but not as much as other people. I had a friend who bought. He's on low money, and him and his wife must be on, okay money, nothing special, and they bought like a 400 grand house. I dread to think what their mortgage is. The concept of it against their earnings would be huge. Now the interest rates have gone the way they have, and that just I mean, those sorts of things. What you effectively all you're doing is paying to borrow money from the bank, the money that doesn't exist anyway. So
Yeah, exactly.
It's just one of those things. It's become so bad that I at the moment sit there and go, how does it get solved? Because unless someone comes in and radically changes it, something bad's got to happen. Because surely people must push back against this eventually.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when you start to think, what is that button going to be? What? I often put up, obviously, going down a Bitcoin rabbit hole, you learn quite a bit about monetary systems and how things work globally. And you're listening to people like Lawrence, Liz Alden, etc., etc., etc. And you sort of try and sit there and think, okay, with this seriously can't continue. Obviously the money system's breaking, or probably broken, and the present way of doing stuff that's probably been done well since 71. Pre that, it was on a standard, gold standard, but since we've been off of that from 71, we can't keep printing. You can't keep printing money forever and ever 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 without the consequences of money debasement and inflation, until at some point it just becomes economically so damaging to your country that you get a Zimbabwe, or and other examples from around the world. And a lot of probably pre-2020, because I was so busy, really not interested in anything, because I was cracking away with my job, having a great time. Everything was okay-ish, I didn't even, if someone had said to me, oh, we could be the next Zimbabwe, I would have said, what are you talking about, you idiot? We're Great Britain. You're not encouraged to even look there if you're lucky enough and fortunate enough to be, have a good business and, getting by and having a fairly good standard of living. Since then, since a few things happened, since I got into investing, since I found Bitcoin, that took me down so many different rabbit holes, starting to understand about the money and the money process. Now it's just like, well, yeah, that's on the table. I can see it. I can see it happening, but I'm not sure that, or I'd hope that in a Western civilized organization like the UK, that's got so much big history for decades and decades and decades, they would quite let it go. So what's the thought process? Is there a reset coming? Is there a new system coming? But, is there going to be a lot of pain before whatever could happen will happen, and then off we go again on whatever? I don't know what your thoughts are.
I find that question really difficult because I don't know the answer, because I look at practicality as well as what my brain tells me. Oh, this has to happen, but practically, governments are not going to let their currency go without a fight.
No.
So, and then I look in history, and there's not. Historically, we've always had reserve banking or reserve currencies in some way. So we've never had a point where we've got a currency that's not reserved against something or pegged against something, really, because gold's always existed. So since 71, we have had this non-reserve currency. And you are right, I can only see it getting worse. Hyperinflation, these sorts of things are realistically on the table. But what do they do to combat it? Well, in history, that's never happened. So no, as far as I'm aware, no nation or state in any way has had to go backward to go forward. So I don't know if that's what Trump's doing at the moment with recalling US gold reserves and Bitcoin. If he is, my personal opinion is maybe he's a bit of a genius, because what he's effectively doing is reserve currencying the dollar to make it continue as a global reserve currency. Would be a very clever move to secure the future of the dollar potentially. But he won't say that, obviously, but that's potentially what he's doing. But there's got to be something radical that happens, but I don't know what that is, because I don't see, like I said, I don't see governments giving up their currency without a strong fight. You've got historic precedents of war where America banned gold. Do I see the government's trying to ban Bitcoin? Probably not. I don't see it being that much of a threat. I see more of the currency debasement problem and how they're going to solve that. And do they go back to a reserve currency? Or does the US going back to a global reserve currency work for the rest of the financial system and mean that it stabilizes it a little bit with Bitcoin in the background, because Bitcoin's going to be part of that for him? Possibly. It's a slower move, but maybe that shows where the future might lie. And then you've got things like, I personally believe Strategy will probably become a global Bitcoin bank in some way. Saylor's talked about it. Those sorts of things would then change the concept of money, because suddenly you've got this asset worldwide available, loan against it, and it's going to become a reserve asset in some capacity. It's all speculation and conjecture, but I think that's where I sort of see the potential going, because I just don't see currencies disappearing even in my lifetime, probably not even in my kids' lifetimes.
It's such an interesting concept, and I really tried hard not to go down too much of a speculative. It's good fun, has to be said. It's really good fun, like having a hypothetical conversation. But I don't feel that helps me personally, as in when my kids say, "Dad, what are we going to do now?"
Yeah, I think the only answer to that is you have to find a way that you can feel like you're trying to help. I mean, I've tried speaking to politicians, I've tried raising petitions, I've tried doing all of these things, writing to MPs. I'm not, it's not a time-consuming thing. It's not going to do a lot, and it's not going to change a lot. But all we can do is keep doing those things. The people that need to change it, unfortunately, being in a democracy the way we are in Westminster. So the only way, I heard someone say this the other day, and it's very, very true. Because Lawrence Leopard says, "Fix the money, fix the problem," or "Fix the money, fix the world." Sorry, and I believe that. And someone said, "I'm a one issue voter," they called it. Whoever chooses Bitcoin gets my vote. And I agree with that, because the concept is, to me, fix the money, fix the world. And therefore, if someone is willing to be that forward thinking, I'm willing to back them, that they understand money and understand where the world is, to try and fix it. Whoever that is, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. We're a long way from having to vote in a general election. But I'm hoping that person comes forward. I'm hoping that's, whether it's a third party or an existing party, but I will be a one issue voter at that point. Whoever takes my vote.
Yeah, it sounds, it would probably be the only way I'd get that interested in me voting in properly, sincerely again. Because anything that's going to improve the money should improve the way we live, which should hopefully be prosperous for the generations that we're all trying to look after and nurture and bring up. So
well, it's not sustainable the way it is it? It's just not the way it's going. I mean, I think I saw someone put the inflation, general inflation since COVID has been 45%. The problem is wages have gone up less than that by a long way. Exactly. Under 10%. In most cases, probably under 5%. That's a massive hit to everyone. And when you go back to pre-COVID, 1.5% or 1% mortgage interest rates, utility bills. I mean, I was paying double figures for a 5-person household compared to now. All of these things are such significant increases compared to the wage increases that it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I hear this point a lot, and I've never really thought about it because we're in a modern society. But when you go back to the 50s and 60s, it was very traditional for a middle-class family to have one wage. You'd have a stay-at-home housewife. Again, no sexism or gender misogyny here, but I'm just talking about the way it was. And they could live a comfortable life with a housewife, 2-3 kids in a middle-class lifestyle on one wage. You name me many people who could do that these days. And I'll tell you, you're naming the top 5% or 10% of earners in the UK. So we're just getting to this point where life has changed so much, and it's just not as easy as it used to be. And that's, quite simply, it's not fair. It's just not.
It's really interesting you say that, because I was born in '65. I won't go into my childhood really, because it was a bit different to most of my friends. But when I went, everywhere, every friend's house I ever went to, mum was always at home. Mum was always at home.
And it's
All
true.
mums were at home.
I've never really thought about it until I heard someone mention it. And it wasn't even like that was an exceptional circumstance. That was normal on a normal lifestyle, middle class lifestyle. Like I say, it wasn't working class where you were struggling to get by doing that. You might not have had everything in the world. I'm not, it was a different time back then. But the fact was, it was perfectly normal and acceptable, and people could afford to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas now, that's not that would be a pipe dream for most people.
I can't even think of all the people that I know in the family, the cousins, the nephews, everyone's having to work.
As I say, I've got a daughter, and one of the things I look at and say, when you have a child, you shouldn't be sitting there going, I've got to go back to work after 9 months. You should be sitting there going, I'm going to enjoy this for the next 12, 18, 2 years, whatever you want. I would, if it was my wife, I'd want to say to her, you have as much time as you want. There's no pressure for you to go back to work. But the fact is, most people don't have that luxury anymore. And that's not fair. That's just not fair.
It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's heartbreaking. But I do have some faith. And I hope that I've done the right thing and the family's doing the right thing. So whatever's going to be presented to us in the future, then we've got that sort of heads up, a little bit of it sounds so selfish, that little bit of an advantage that hopefully will give us a good stead going forward,
It's really funny you say that way, because again, I keep going back to things, but this is always a learning curve. I was listening to Lawrence yesterday. I can't remember what podcast it was on. It was live, but the guy he was talking to said he finds Bitcoin really like a double-edged sword for him, because he knows what's coming and he knows that he's safe, but by celebrating Bitcoin going up, he's almost celebrating others' failure. And I've never looked at it that way. And it's really true. You're absolutely right. We can all sit here and feel not smug. I'm not saying we feel smug, but sit there and say we've done what we can to secure our children, secure our lifestyle, secure all of these things. But when the inevitable does happen, we're going to be celebrating while others will be in absolute pain. Unfortunately, that's unavoidable. And I'm not saying it's acceptable, but it's just the nature of the asset. And that's quite scary, really.
Yeah. And when you think about it, Rob, if you will, even to the people that you think you're close to now, including family members, you'll be known as you're now one of them. You could get labelled to a degree. You could get labelled. It's okay for you. I've done it to other people. I've done it subconsciously when I've been talking to my wife and we've met someone and they're doing whatever. And it's all right for them, isn't it? But that's just my naivety at the time, but that's normal. And I think that's something that psychologically, potentially, because we're talking about a potential massive difference in wealth, possibly. And, my kids aren't even used to that. If it doesn't happen in my lifetime, that'll get passed on to them. It's something you have to think about a little bit, because there's people like ourselves. There's people like ourselves that have got that advantage of getting in and understanding that a little bit earlier, and a lot of people, well, maybe they won't even get in at all.
I think it's
a hard one.
It goes back to that education point. I mean, one thing I've done recently, and this is purely genuine, I've tried emailing universities to say, I will come and speak to students about tax, Bitcoin, all of these things, because I want to get in front of these people and go, if I give you the problem, you tell me the answer. Very much Joe's What's the Problem video, if you've seen that. It's what's the problem, you tell me the answer, because actually there's not many answers to the problem once you realize what it is. Once you realize money printing and inflation and all these things, what is the answer to it? There's not many. The problem is not many people are asking the question, and I'm really trying hard to share that knowledge where I can. I don't orange pill people. It's a rule I have, because I don't think there's any value in it. People think you're mad when you say the word Bitcoin. I get that. I just want people to understand what the problem is, because then you can tell me or find your own solution.
Yeah.
We're all at the point where we think we found the solution, because there's only, to me, there's only two: gold and Bitcoin. They're the only two solutions. They're the only real hard money. And 100%. Then when you take gold, the problem with gold is it has counterparty risk, which therefore eradicates that for me. I don't want counterparty risk. So then I'm at the point where I'm left with one. But the thing I found most, especially working in traditional finance, because when you speak to people in traditional finance, they're very experienced, like yourself. You know, you've been a business owner for a long time. You speak to people that have been a business owner for a long time and tell them everything they understood about finance is wrong. They laugh you out of a room. Mate, I've run businesses for 30 years. I've exited 4. I've made 10 million quid here. Trust me, you don't know what you're talking about. You can't tell me something I don't know. There's no point in trying to reason with that. But there's also no point in feeling like you're better than that person. Yeah. Present to them the problem and say, here's what's happening. You've made your money because your money exponentially increases because you haven't got a correlation to your time and money. You grow a business, you exit it, you make a lot of money in a short period of time. You're making thousands of percents return. Most average people could hope for 8% on the stock market, and even then they're not beating inflation. They're just losing slower than everyone else.
Minus your fees through your counterparty that's sorting it out for you.
Exactly. And that's the way I see it. You're just losing slower than everyone else. Same with property. Property isn't actually investment. It's betting that fiat will fail, because the more fiat you need to buy a property, the property goes up because you need to spend more to get it. It doesn't mean you're making money. It just means that the property stayed the same to an extent. The amount of fiat you need to buy it has cost you more. And then with property, you've obviously got counterparty risk, but you've also got the cost of ownership. You know, your boiler's not going to break when you own Bitcoin, is it? So you factor all of these things in. And what I'm trying to say is, it's not about telling people what the answer is. It's about getting them to understand the problem. And that's where I was saying at the start, I don't really think that that's common knowledge to people. You know, if people would think you're privileged if you've got 10 grand in a bank account, I get that. I understand that. But the problem is, your 10 grand next year is worth less than it was the prior year. Yeah. To spend what you would have spent the year before, you'll need 12 grand or 13 grand. So your money's getting eroded away, but people don't look at it that way. And that's where I think the education and problem is. And that's what I'd really like to expand on it, because I think more people deserve to know. But I do think you're right. People will label you as one of them. Not just one of them when you've got more money and more wealth than everyone else, but one of them as a Bitcoiner. You're a bit mental. You think something's going to be big. Those things that people think, which is why I don't orange pill people, because it's a pointless conversation a lot of the time.
And people are like, oh, you were lucky, you were this, you were that, and it's just like, what, really?
Yeah.
How many hours have I tried to put into learning about? I don't know about. It's a good question for you, Rob. Actually, on your journey, would you say the amount of hours that you've put in trying to learn about Bitcoin? It sounds weird, but actually, Bitcoin has only been 6% of that learning curve. The rest of it has just been an open minefield of everything else that quantifies why Bitcoin exists.
And I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, a lot of, when you read a book like Broken Money is not a Bitcoin book. It's about the broken monetary system.
Lean, yeah, brilliant.
Bitcoin comes into it though, because it's a natural progression. When you read other books, Sovereign Individual, to name one, there's lots of other ones out there. They're not necessarily Bitcoin books. They're telling you what the problem is, and realization is that the solution is very limited to what it is. And Bitcoin is one of the only solutions. I think probably the hardest thing to fathom, and I still can't fathom this, is when you do something like create Bitcoin, how you can get it so right first time. I just cannot fathom. The level of intelligence to do all of that. You could put 100 of the cleverest people in a room and they would not have got it as right as it is.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
It's crazy. Like, people talk about Bitcoin 2.0 and you just don't need it because it's so perfect first time. And that's almost I struggle to fathom that. I really do.
Yeah, I sometimes I sit there and I think, is this just a universal thing that's just come out of the universe through some very in touch people that were meant to at that time crack this method that is going to bring stability back to humanity? I really don't know. It kind of makes sense, but it all sounds a bit woo woo as well, you know.
I totally agree. I mean, it's just that's one of the hardest things I find. I mean, I'm one of these people. I don't want to find out who Satoshi Nakamoto is. I'm not interested.
Irrelevant.
I think it would be a bigger problem if we did find out who he is now, because it's gone that far. But I think that the key point is it's just we don't need anything better because it's been built right first time. Obviously, there's challenges coming forward. You know, quantum computing is one, but from my knowledge, if quantum computing becomes a problem, we've got bigger problems than it hacking Bitcoin, because it could probably get into every bank account in the world.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's a minimal risk, and it is also achievable to be quantum proof. I think probably one of the challenges for me would be network speed, number of transactions, because once it becomes a worldwide asset, at the moment, Lightning couldn't necessarily take that. But there are ways around that. That goes to a debate that we won't get into on store of value and medium of exchange. So, yeah, it's just one of those things. But I do think there's challenges, but to get it so right, and it almost is the perfect solution.
I'm picking up on what you was talking about earlier. You're obviously involved with groups, yeah?
Yep.
Different group. What groups are you involved with?
So I'm involved with Crypto UK. They're a trade group within crypto, lobbying for policy, and we try and talk to HMRC about taxes and lobby for changes where we think things are wrong. I'm quite close with Bitcoin Policy UK as well. Freddie and Susie, who are the co-founders there, they do a lot of great work in the Bitcoin space. I went to their event a couple of weeks ago, which was in London. So Bitcoin for Institutions. There's those two are the main ones, I'd say.
And how's that, since you've been involved, how is that progressing?
I think the work that Freddie and Susie are doing at Bitcoin Policy UK is literally unbelievable. So Susie writes a lot of articles. She talks, she writes for Forbes and people like that. She's been in lots of places with her journalistic columns that are brilliant on Bitcoin and positive on Bitcoin compared to a lot of the mainstream media. Freddie, who's the head of policy there, he does so much great work in writing to ministers and getting people talking about it. The change I've seen is more politicians are talking about it, more high-level people are involved in it. Cartwright, who are a big company, they've recently put some in their pension fund. They're very big and involved in it. There's lots more traction on it now, I would say. It's becoming too big to ignore, I think, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah. That's really cool. And do you get to interact with the younger community in any way?
So I do within client bases, but one of the issues with the younger community is they're very much more abject to tax, I would say. So when I do speak to younger people, they will have a group. A lot of them speak together, certainly online. And of that group, say there's 50 people in that group, 2 will speak to me because the others aren't interested. They don't want to know about tax. So I think the young people are definitely involved. Would I say from a Bitcoin standpoint, the point they've spent that much time necessarily researching? I'd say not yet. I think the problem is with crypto, a quick buck is what people are looking for, not a sustained level of investment. You know, if I go back to when I was 19, I wasn't investing in the stock market for 8% a year. And that's the equivalent of Bitcoin to them. They're thinking, well, why would I invest in Bitcoin and make 15, 20% when I can try and hit this meme coin that's going to 10,000% on me? So I think still that a lot of that's happening. I'm not saying there's not young people in Bitcoin. I've seen them at events. I've spoken to them. I think probably the issue is there's a bit of a gap. You know, when you read a book's a big challenge for me, let alone a 20-year-old kid.
Definitely. If it's not audio, I can't I can't do it.
Exactly. And even if you go to audio, a lot of kids are not interested, 20, 21-year-olds, they're not interested in hearing for 2 hours about Bitcoin and how it will change their life.
No.
I don't know about you. When I was 20, I thought I was indestructible. I was never going to die. So,
Yeah.
I suppose it's an age thing from that example as well. There's a lot of them in crypto. I wouldn't say there's a lot of them in Bitcoin yet.
Do you think that it's a good question for you, because this one comes up quite often now, and a lot of people talk about it through general conversation. Do you think that we're in danger of losing a state pension scheme
Absolutely.
going forward?
My personal opinion is, my sister said this to me 20 years ago, right? My sister's a lot cleverer than me, but she turned around to me 20 years ago and she went, one of the problems we've got in this country is we're so against immigration, right? This was, like I said, 20 years ago, immigration was still a problem. She said, the problem with being against immigration is you're looking at it from the wrong standpoint, because to an extent we need immigrants, because when her and I are pensioners, the amount of pensioners in this country will almost be 2/3 of the population. So when you take that pot that we're drawing from, you've got 2/3 of the population drawing from the pot, 1/3 putting into it. Doesn't make sense. So what you need is more people putting into that pot, and immigration is part of that answer. I'm not saying it's not controlled or you just let anyone in. I'm just saying that is part of the answer. I'm not saying I'm pro-immigration. I'm just saying logically that makes sense. Now, what I see at the moment is a state pension pot isn't a pot that we put into and then we hold and then one day it's there for us. The state pension pot is a pot that everyone puts into every year and other people draw out from. It's a constant in and out. It's a Ponzi scheme. So it's not money that you're saving. It's money that you're giving to the government, who are then giving it to someone else on the promise that they will return it to you one day in some way or another. The problem with that is in the future, when money is worth a lot less and inflation continues and it continues the way it is and your money's worth a lot less, £60 a week isn't going to get you too far. But then it's not going to be much more than £60 a week because it's not going up in line with inflation. So you end up with something that's worthless to you. And that's the only way I see it going. Again, don't know the answer, but I'm not even sure if a state pension in any capacity will exist when I come to draw it. And if it does, I think it will be almost pointless to the cost of living at the time.
Yeah, and you're only talking what? Will you fall into the bracket of 67 at the moment, 68?
I've gone on the basis that by the time I get there, I'll probably be 70.
All right. Oh, blimey, really?
Yeah, I think because we're living longer and, average age is going up. I think by the time I'm 70, that won't be classed as old as it was when we were younger. So I think that given the state of things, I think it will probably be closer to 70. But that's a pure estimate and guess.
So that's basically 30 years for you.
Yeah.
And after everything we talk about, and we've only just touched on certain stuff, I cannot even believe, I really personally believe our world is going to be so different in 30 years' time. So different. And if it isn't, then it's going to be so different, but in a really weird, not very nice way.
I think it will be different. I think it will be massively different. I think there's lots of things that are going to happen. So I think the problem with desperate people, they do desperate things. Yeah. And I think the government at the moment are desperate.
Yeah.
I think that desperation will lead to a lot more controversial measures. So one of the ones I see coming in is a tax on unrealized gains on pensions. I think that's inevitable. I think that'll happen. What that means is, to give you an example, if I bought Bitcoin in a pension or MicroStrategy, say I put 10 grand in MicroStrategy, over the next 10 years, it turns into 1.5 million because Bitcoin goes through the roof. I've got a 1.49 million unrealized gain. Well, what that would mean then is HMRC will go to the people I hold the shares with and go, what does he hold? Oh, he holds 1.5 million. What did he invest? 10 grand. Okay. So here you go, Robin. Here's a tax bill on 1.49 million. I've got no choice. That tax bill is going to be what? 6 figures. So I'm going to have to liquidate in order to pay it. And then that's not something I want to do. Why should I have to pay tax on unrealized pension gains? But I think that's going to be a desperate measure. And I think that's one of the measures that I see coming in. So I do see the world changing massively. And I do see these things going to get worse before they get better.
Jesus, that would totally strip out. Oh my God. That's severe.
I think it's an easy target because what you've got in this country, I think you've got a high. I read a stat. I can't remember, was it last year or the year before? The number of pension millionaires in this country is huge, but they're not paper millionaires; they're pension millionaires.
Yeah.
What that means is the government can quantify the tax they'd get from that, and they'd get a lot of tax from it. But then that becomes a bigger problem because how do you police it? I don't know. I can't answer that. People always say to me, "Oh, well, they won't be able to prove it. Or they won't." They absolutely will. That they can bring in regulation and measures quite easily to make these things compulsory. And if you went to, if you take a big share dealing platform, I don't know, I can't think of one off the top of my head. Hargreaves Lansdown.
Hargreaves Lansdown, yeah.
So if you as HMRC write to Hargreaves Lansdown and go, to continue operating in the UK, you have to provide us customer data. No brainer, they're going to do it.
Of course they will.
It's not hard to get the data. They don't need to go direct to you. They can go direct to the source and get it. They're doing it with crypto in 2 years' time already. So they will do it with other assets, and then it's easy to tax it.
Did you hear what Rob just said?
They are doing it with crypto. So there's something called CARF, Crypto Asset Reporting Framework.
Yep.
So a lot of crypto investors will have seen last year, Binance stopped operating in the UK. Crypto.com and Coinbase both said we've changed our legal entity. The reason why was they had to create a UK legal entity and register with the UK FCA. What that means is that from 2027, it is compulsory for those platforms to provide customer data on UK customers to HMRC if requested. So they don't need you to comply. They can get the data from the source.
Yep. It's mad, isn't it, dude?
It is mad. One thing I've always said, though, and I understand people's apprehension with data because we're in a data-driven world, but to actually get Bitcoin and crypto to a point where it works in first world communities, regulation is necessary.
Yeah,
they're not going to let it stand by and let it continue as the wild, wild west. They can't.
No.
I can tell you for fact, I spoke to someone at a bank recently. There's been some new scam legislation brought in at banks. And basically what it means is when you're scammed, a bank becomes liable for what you lose. Now, what's been happening is people have been going through crypto scams, for example, going to their bank, complaining. The bank then has to pay them under the new regulations. Banks are basically, what I was told is banks are seeing tens of millions of pounds leave every week. That's because crypto is the wild, wild west. Joe Blogs over in the Seychelles can open a crypto coin tomorrow with absolutely no meaning. 1 million people invest in it and put 10 grand each in. Suddenly they've got a load of money and they rug pull it. And then there's no repercussions for them because they're long gone. And then you go to your bank, complain, and the bank pays out because you got scammed. So these things can't keep happening. It's too much of the wild, wild west. So the regulation, for me, is a good thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is transparency. Blockchain is transparent by its very nature. So saying that it's hidden and not easily identifiable is probably very naive. It's really easy. It's really transparent. All I need is one piece of data. So say you on-ramp via Coinbase. I'm not going to say that everyone does it this way, but if you on-ramp via Coinbase, send to a MetaMask wallet, go into the crypto sphere and do a load of trading. All they need is that original Coinbase transaction. Then they've got your MetaMask wallet address. Then they've got all the data. It's all on the blockchain.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. Whether people think that's a good thing or bad thing is irrelevant because it's just there. And, I don't think Bitcoin was user specific. It's there for anyone to use, regulate. It's not going to choose who can use it and who can't use it. And is it really? Not
at all. But I think the point is, I think it doesn't matter who uses it. It's got to be friendly for the democracy that you live in.
Of course it is.
Because they're going to want to know that they get their tax, which whether you agree with it or not, that's the government that you agree. That's the democracy you choose to live in. That's their rules, and you should follow them, as you said earlier that you do. that's what I always say to people. I don't choose the rules. I'm not here to enforce them. I'm here to help you navigate them.
That's right.
So as long as you do that, and you go through the motions, you might not agree with it, but it is a bit of a necessary evil. There's no hidden methods. People will say, how do I pay no tax? If it was that easy, then I'd be a millionaire. It's all of these things, but I just think that we need to accept that if it's going to be here, it's got to work with governments, not against them.
Yeah, and I'm sure it will. I can't see why it won't, to be honest. And there'll always be the people that backlash against it, but they backlash against anything, Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I am very positive. I can only see good out of it all. I can see a lot of pain coming to get to that good out of it all. But that's when you've got to sort of be pretty cementive in your views, in your ways, and supportive, and just knuckle down and believe in something and just crack on. Crack on within the rules that you're presented. It's the way I look at it.
I agree, and it's like you say, it's one of those things. You got to work with it on the basis that that unfortunately people won't get there ahead of time, and they will suffer. I'm one of those people where I'll happily, sit there and go, look, I'm not here to gloat. I'm not here to do any of that and say that, like you say, when people say I was lucky, I just chose to opt out. That's all. I went through, the freeze at a bank, and that very much changed my thought process on keeping cash, and how I navigate that system. Similarly to working with exchanges, I've been frozen recently by a crypto exchange.
Oh, really?
It's no different. Yeah, it's no different. I keep it, keep it yourself, self custody, because a crypto exchange is very much like a bank. They can do what they want.
Yeah, 100%. They make it. They make it quite well. And I know Coinbase now. I mean, they're forever changing their rules at the moment. So that's another indicator to me that things are changing and regulations are changing and coming in. And it doesn't surprise me when you say about, the Inland Revenue wanting to know and having these things set up with different financial institutions to know, it's the ultimate KYC, isn't it? The 100%. Ultimate. Absolutely the ultimate, which is, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do. Well, I can't remember what I was saying now. Oh, God, what was I saying? Oh, man, I hate that.
When you digress and you get caught in another subject.
Yeah. Oh, God, what was I saying? Oh, yes, the Coinbase. I mean, the recent one is, if you buy some Bitcoin or whatever, and you want to self-custody it, you have to verify where you're sending it to now, and it's just not. It's not a 5-minute thing. It can take a day for them to actually go, well, okay, you've got to send this to verify the wallet you send it from. And I just, for God's sake, man, is it node time? I think it's node time.
This comes down to regulation again, though. The regulation has changed a lot. Like when you sign up to an exchange now, I've noticed you have to wait 24 hours before you can trade onto it. You have to verify your wallet quite often. They'll ask you to wait 24 hours after you've verified your wallet before you send to it. There's a lot of that going on. Again, it comes down to I don't know the ins and outs of what the FCA did. They brought in something else where you have to verify where you're sending it to. So is it your wallet? Is it someone else's? Where
That's
are they paid to?
Yeah.
They called that the travel rule.
That's it.
It all becomes so muddied. It got to the point because I remember when it happened. I used to send a lot of stuff on exchanges under sort of cheaper blockchains like Phantom, for example.
Okay.
And then I noticed Phantom and Polygon, I couldn't do it for some reason after the changes, and it annoyed me because I had to go back to Ethereum, which is an expensive chain to send USDC on.
Yeah.
But it was sort of like, why is it changed that I can't send it on Phantom? I assume it's to do with verification more, but I don't know. It's just very strange. But I'm not against regulation. I think it's necessary for where we want to go, but at the same time, it's about right regulation. And sometimes the people that write the regulation, you can quite clearly see they're not crypto native.
Yeah, for sure. deeply institutionalized in another way, as I say.
Well, working in accountancy, I know that a lot of these things would be outsourced to people at the big four accountancy firms, consultants paying a lot of money to write these things who have never necessarily done it. They do a bit of research and do it, get paid £1,000 a day to write it. Doesn't always work, does it?
That sounds good, doesn't it? £1,000 a day to write something.
I don't know. It's very much a sell your soul to the devil sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But there's always people that want to do that.
Definitely.
Dude, that was a fascinating first chat. I would really like to do a little series with you, if that's okay, on separate little projects and topics. And I think one of the biggest things that, especially my relationship with people in the gold and silver community, the many questions that are mostly the biggest question is, can you just tell me what Bitcoin is in an easy way? and my big philosophy on both my channels is, that the most important thing you can do is firstly ask yourself why you want to invest in something, or why you want to invest full stop, and then go and educate yourself on it. But I thought it's about time that I come up with a little bit more of a video that can simplify things without making it too complicated for people to, okay, yeah, that sort of makes sense to me. Perhaps we could do.
I'll happily do that. I mean,
perhaps we could do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Get asked that a lot. Get asked it a lot.
Just I'll happily do that, mate. I mean, I love talking about it, and I love it. I'm very caveated with it's always my opinion, because part of the joy of Bitcoin is nothing is defined.
That's right.
That what we'll go into on that, which I'll store of value, medium of exchange. One of the biggest debates I get into, and I'm always apprehensive to give my opinion because some Bitcoiners will shout me down.
Go on then, very quickly.
Very quickly, I personally believe Bitcoin is a store of value. The thing I mentioned earlier about the network not being ready for to take the number of transactions that would be required. That's very much my personal opinion. I think it works better that way. But I understand that the white paper was a peer-to-peer cashless system. It was designed for a certain thing. I just think at the moment that's what we need is a store of value, not necessarily a medium of exchange. And back to my point earlier, don't see governments giving up their currency that easily. Whereas I think I heard someone say it recently, if you're a commodity, the government don't care about you. If you're a currency, you're fighting against their currency, so they care about you. For me, commodity works better. Yeah,
for sure. And you won't get any pushback from me, because that's exactly how I see it.
I think a lot of people do, but I have.
It's simple.
Yeah, it's simple. I have had this debate a lot, and I do get very passionate people that disagree with me, and I understand that. I'm the sort of person that can walk into a room, and if I can learn off someone else, I will. So I'm happy to listen and learn and even have my opinion changed. At the moment, that's my opinion based on the research I've done.
And it kind of makes sense, because I can't see strategy using it as a medium of exchange, can you?
No.
Anytime soon. Can you see anyone else using that at that level? Can you see BlackRock using it? I get that, and I've used it. I've bought things with Bitcoin just to see how it works. So I get that it can be used that way, but the infrastructure is way too big at the moment to even think it could cope with it.
I totally agree, and I just see that I see that even if you had what you'd have potentially is a country where its currency is so debased and hyperinflated that maybe they adopt Bitcoin, but then what you have is it's like adopting gold, and what you then have is that over time the amount of transactions using that asset will reduce, and they'll create their own asset backed by that asset because you're not moving it around.
Yeah.
And that's what I see happening again.
Yeah.
But again, people will disagree. But yeah, I think that's a great debate to have with gold, silver, and Bitcoin, to put them in that bracket of the commodities bracket and discuss that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, that'd be really cool. And then, because they're all the same sort of thing, but they're the three things that I really do sort of have had a very heavy interest in as storing wealth. But yeah, perhaps we can talk about it. Perhaps we could talk about, as well as trying to use my tax, my ISA, my stocks and shares ISA as much as I can while I can.
There's lots of ways to use that while you can, whilst that still exists, because I think they've talked about reducing it, and I think it's coming.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely while it exists. Pensions as well. There's different things around pensions.
Yeah. Dude, I've really enjoyed that. I'm pleased. I'm pleased we actually decided to do that, because it's so easy just to get people on and talk about the super fantastic side of high prices and whatever, but it just isn't real. It ain't real to us common folk.
I'm very much a realist. I like to think myself as a realist, and working in the financial sector, I have a very grounded opinion of what's possible compared to what's probable. And I think that's where I want to be. You know, one of the issues, you know, I've always had with Bitcoin is, will it benefit me in my lifetime? I think it will, but there's a risk it won't, because the fundamental change that has to happen for something like hyper Bitcoinization is huge. Yeah. And you've got to believe that every government in the world is going to work together to stop that happening in the short term.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I can't see that either. But it's going to be wild time to be alive, just to see the process.
It is, and we're on the ground floor, sat with our popcorn ready to go. So that's a good place to be, in my opinion.
I like that. I like that a lot. Maybe wine gums instead of popcorn.
I don't like popcorn either, mate, but I'll have a bag of Maltesers instead.
It sounds cool. Well, that's a really great first chat, dude. That hour and a half went really flipping quick, as it really always does. They always do. It's that's a really good sign that I've personally enjoyed myself anyway.
I really did too, mate. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Stay on the line. I'll just pause this one off. Thank you very much. Where can people find you, dude, as a rule?
So I'm on Twitter, the Bitcoin and Crypto Accountant. I think it's at Secret Invest 2. It is. But you'll find me under the Bitcoin and Crypto Accountant. Buythebookaccountancy.co.uk is one of my websites, or cryptotaxhelp.co.uk. Contact me through any of those channels. I'll do anyone a free consultation if it helps you a little bit.
Brilliant. Cheers, dude. I'll put all that in the video description anyway. And I look forward to part 2, maybe after you've been to Bedford sometime.
Definitely.
Is that a ticket thing?
Yeah, it is a ticket thing. But I don't even know if I'm going to go to the event. I want to see Lawrence Lepper, but yeah, it is a ticket thing. I think it's I can't remember how much I paid for it. I booked it ages ago.
Yeah. Interesting. I'd love to go along. I'd love to go along to and experience the football club.
Yeah, they do that.
On the match day, yeah.
Yeah, they do it I don't go to the Saturday, but they do a Saturday event. So the Friday event is the speakers, and the Saturday they go to the football and they put minibuses on from Bedford.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems, good luck to him. He's definitely changed what he's doing, but he's done a lot of work with that, and you never know.
I him. He's done some great work, and in fairness to him, he's absolutely right. He said the other day that he pivoted out of Bitcoin podcasts at the very peak of Bitcoin podcasts, and he did to an extent. So maybe he did the right thing. It's just whether that's the same as a Bitcoin event now is the question, really. But I suppose we'll see.
He has some interesting people on his podcast now.
Very.
It's quite cool. Quite cool to see. Anyway, I won't keep you anymore. Stay on the line. I've just paused this one off, dude. Thank you very much for coming, and I'll see you again soon.